G'day, it's Robbie again. Well, in this video we're going to have a basic look at feed knurling. Feed knurling is where you feed the knurl horizontally along the bed to get a long knurl, and it's handy. That's a little Tommy bar, a breaker bar I use quite regularly. I've done a video on that. And here's a chip scraper with a different knurl pattern on it, all done with horizontal feed. And it's pretty simple to do. It's just a matter of a couple of little tricks you've got to watch out for. Now, to do this, I'll be using my basic old cheap knurl, which is a HBM. I mean, you can get a lot of knurls, scissor knurls in that pattern. Scissor knurl is the way to go for a small lathe because it doesn't put a lot of side thrust on compared to a push type knurl. And they can actually still be used as a push type knurl, because if you use this on, say, really big diameter stuff that won't fit in the jaws, you can still push against it in the conventional fashion as you would with a side type pushing type standard knurl. So yeah, they can do both jobs, but they are really handy for small lathes because the pinching action doesn't put all that load on the compound like just a standard knurling head. All right, I'll turn up some steel rod and we'll get cracking. Changing knurl wheels is a pretty simple exercise. What you do is knock out the pins. You can see that they slightly reset one side. Well, they knock out from that side, so just get a punch. And they just tap out like that. They've got some little ridges around them to make them bite into metal, little splines. So when you put them back, knock them back from the same side, and that way the splines will, go into their existing slots, hopefully. So we'll put in the other wheel, the finer wheel. Line him up. You can see there's no ridges in there, so you know knocking in from the right side, so just give it a couple of taps and do the other one. Pretty simple. Oops, it fell on the floor, that one. Oh. Right, we're good to go. We'll start off with the coarsest feed, which is the feed you should be using normally. And on this lathe, the coarsest feed has got a feed rate of 0.23 millimeters per chuck revolution. Then we'll go to the medium feed, which on this lathe is 0.12 millimeters per chuck revolution of feed rate. And finally we'll finish off with the finest feed, which on this lathe is 0.06 millimeters per chuck revolution. And then we'll look at it and see, we'll look at the job and see how the finish varied as the feed rate decreased. Okay, we'll give it a squirt with some lube. This is just Kero and oil, engine oil. That's all I've ever used and it works fine. We've got the lathe set on the lowest speed, which is what you should always do when you're knurling, mainly because it puts a big load on the lathe, and so you want to go into your bottom gear and that way it won't stall on you. let's have a look at the results. This little bit here is where I set up the knurl originally. I mean, that's just to get the depth right, and also, I mean, that's the sort of knurl that you would do, a stationary knurl, if you're, say, knurling a knob or screw head or something, bolt head. From here on, through to about here, I've had it on the coarse feed, and you can see it's a good bit of knurling. That's as good as you could hope for. From here to here, through here, I've got it on the medium feed, and you can see it's starting to get a spiral pattern in there. See that spiral pattern? I hope it shows up. It's not easy to see. And here I went to the finest feed, and it's been way too slow, and what's happened is it hasn't fed fast enough to keep up with the pattern, so it's basically eaten away at the edges of the pattern, chewed it up. That's the end result. You don't want that. So this is what you want, the coarse feed rate, and of course the coarser the pattern, the faster the feed rate is the way it should work. Alright, we'll do some more knurling. I've got it on the coarse feed again, and I'll put it in and we'll feed it along the shaft. The metal will get quite hot. Also the diameter of the end product will be slightly bigger than you started, because when you knurl the pattern, it gets crushed into the job, and the metal's got to go somewhere, so the lows go in and the highs come out. So basically you finish up with a slightly bigger diameter shaft than you started with. It's a good way, it's a quick and dirty way also to build up shafts where they say spun a bearing, and then put some bearing, Loctite bearing seating compound on there, and you can basically, you know, patch up shafts that way. They'll go for ages that way. I've done it a few times. Alright, I'll wash it off, and then I'll show you how you can dress that up with a round nose cutter. Right, well you can see how that gives you a nice clean edge on your knurling, as against this where you always have a bit of daggy stuff on the outside edges of it. So I always like to machine afterwards. So as I said, do it early, then machine up to the edge of your knurl, and then you get a nice clean finish, and then you can make that into a handle or a punch or whatever. So if you don't want that look, say you like to have little blocks, well all you do is you just machine in the separators between it. So I'll just do it roughly just to show you how it would work. I'll just take a go. So now you've got a nice pattern. It looks kind of cool. You can make those as wide as you want. And, you know, knurling's easy, but as I've shown you this, always use your coarsest feed ratio. You can go medium if you want to say get a spiral effect, but don't use your fine feed or it would chew the shit out of the knurl. It would just destroy it because it's not meant to go that slow. Well, that's about it on my few tips on knurling. The other thing is to watch is if you ever knurl aluminium. Now this is quite hard. This is fairly hard steel. This actually was, you know, harder than mild. So you know, the harder it gets, the more load you've got to put on things. But the one thing I was going to mention is if you ever knurl aluminium, if you're not cross knurling, it's okay. But if you're cross knurling aluminium, you can see there's a lot of side thrust goes on the knurling head as you're moving across. And what can happen very easily is it can actually walk the aluminium through the chuck jaws. So finish up with the aluminium can actually come off of the live centre. It can actually walk sideways into the chuck jaws, and I've had it come very loose and just caught it in time. So yeah, aluminium being as soft as it is, if you're doing a heavy knurl pattern particularly on it, the whole job can slide sideways through the jaws because it's so soft. The only way around that is to either, well, there's two ways to do it. You can either machine a little shoulder on the end of the job so the ends of the jaws will stop it going in, which is what I would normally do, or you can knurl away from the chuck because it's not going to matter, in which case the dead centre or live centre will stop it from moving sideways because it's basically just pushing it harder onto the centre. Anyway, that's it. I'm no knurling expert, but I can knock up a decent knurl, and as you can see, that looks pretty cool. My knurl's only a cheap knurl, and I mean in the video you would have seen that there was a little bit of movement up and down. Well, that's because the knurl wheels that came with it aren't actually perfectly round. It's not the job, it's the cheap knurl. So, you know, it didn't really matter at the end of the day because it just sort of flexed a little bit. But yeah, you know, you buy cheap stuff, well, that's what you can get. Anyway, it does the job for me, and certainly knurling is, yeah, it's good. You know, gives your work a professional finish. Okay, hope you found it interesting. See you next time. Cheers.